One of America's finest diplomats to have actually seen the relationship between New Delhi and Washington develop over the years is Atul Keshap. He is now president of the US-India Business Council. But his experience in having served over here in New Delhi extensively and seeing firsthand what the possibilities of this relationship really are is something which all of us have actually learned a lot from him about. It's been wonderful to speak to him in the past, to see this relationship get to where it is. And it's great to have Atul Keshap with us once again. He joins us from Washington. Thanks very much, Mr. Keshap, for being with us on this program this evening. You know, it's a difficult time in a sense for India and the United States. There has been this entire Pannun episode. Prime Minister Modi, in an interview to the Financial Times, has suggested that one or two incidents shouldn't perhaps take away from the expanse of the relationship. Do you believe that that sends a right signal?
I saw the Prime Minister's remarks, and I think he's got it exactly right, Vishnu. If you think about it, we've actually had an amazing year in U.S.-India relations, probably the best year I've seen in my entire professional career. We had a state visit by the Prime Minister of India to the United States. We had a visit by the President of the United States to India. We had one of the most impactful joint statements I've ever seen, probably ever really, that encompasses the enormous sweep of what we're doing between our two governments, between our two peoples, between our two societies, between our business communities. So I think this is actually a year that is a high watermark in U.S.-India relations. And USIBC has also had a tremendous year. Both governments asked us to launch the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, the Indus-X Defense Platform, and also the Innovation Handshake on the margins of APEC in San Francisco. So on the premise of your question, I would say, look, in every relationship, especially one as broad and diverse and powerful as ours, there are going to be issues that come up. This happens with our closest allies around the world. It has happened with Japan, with France, with the UK, with others. And what I love about the fact that our two governments have been handling whatever issues that come up is that they have done it with maturity and tact, fully mindful of the shared strategic collaboration, the strategic economic and technological convergence between our two great democracies. And so I'm fully confident that they'll manage this in a very reasonable, mature, tactful way, because that is where our relationship has come to. It has reached a new echelon.
Do you believe that this episode is behind us, or do you believe that more might actually pan out given the fact that there is a legal requirement in the United States? There is a U.S. Justice Department investigation which is taking place. There is also the entire issue of an Indian national now in the Czech Republic who the United States wants extradited. But do you believe that despite it all, this as an issue is behind us as far as India and the U.S. are concerned?
Well, look, I can't prognosticate, but here's what I will say. I have a very high degree of confidence that in the corridors of power in Delhi and in Washington, both sides recognize the tremendous importance of our shared partnership across many different dimensions. And whatever happens in this particular matter is going to be dealt with by both governments within the context of that very broad partnership. These are dangerous times. Geostrategically, the world is shakier than it's been in a long time. I think the United States and India reach out to each other and embrace each other because we are the world's largest, most stable, most dynamic, most robust democracies. And so if you look to the east of India, toward the Indo-Pacific, where our partnership is already very well enshrined in the Quad and in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, we're already doing great work together. We have a wonderful partnership in Africa going back several years. And now, increasingly, we have a partnership, I think, forged in trust, focused on ensuring the stability of the Middle East, working with the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other friends. So whatever happens in this particular matter, it is just one matter out of 1,000 that we are working on together. And I think both governments are going to work on it with maturity and tact and a degree of mutual respect and trust.
We're in a difficult time as far as the Red Sea is concerned. The reason I bring up the Red Sea is because we are incredibly close maritime partners, India and the United States. I've personally seen this relationship evolve from one of distrust to one of immense trust over the last several years now. Do you believe New Delhi should have a bigger role in protecting international commerce through the Red Sea?
Well, absolutely. India is a major maritime power. India shares our values and the values of the free world with regard to freedom of navigation and commerce. India, I think, has done a tremendous job over the decades of ensuring the ability of nations to trade in open spaces like the Indian Ocean. India patrols the Indian Ocean to ensure the safety of mariners, including anti-piracy patrols. And so India is very, very capable. And what I would say is that it's increasingly clear to me that Washington and New Delhi, Tel Aviv and Riyadh and Abu Dhabi are all seeing each other as joint partners in ensuring the stability of that entire region, including the very critical sea lanes at the Straits of Hormuz, at the Bab el-Mandab, in the Red Sea and in the Suez Canal. And of course, so much commerce flows through those sea lanes. So I think India has a giant stake in it and would be a welcome partner.
Ambassador Keshap, one of the most ambitious programs which was actually spoken about on the sidelines of G20 was a Middle Eastern economic corridor, one which would stretch from, let's say, Mumbai in India all the way to Haifa in Israel, train lines across the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. And then, of course, there's the horrific war which is now taking place, Israel and Gaza. Do you believe that, unfortunately, this huge plan, which was so important for both India and the United States, besides other regional partners, is now very much on the back burner for reasons which nobody could really control?
Well, I spent the first 10 years of my career working on the Middle East, and I was actually the desk officer for UAE and Qatar back in the 9/11 era, a very transformative era in U.S. relations with those countries. And, back when I served in Morocco and when I served in that desk job and in other jobs, there were constantly these sort of disruptions to the flow of things. And this war is tragic. There's been, this act of terrorism was absolutely unacceptable and unforgivable. And so I think what we're seeing here is another one of these periodic disruptions to the overall trend lines in the Middle East. I think there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one, the countries I just mentioned are clearly reaching out to one another as partners in trying to ensure the stability of the Middle East in the face of rather sustained efforts by Iran and Russia and others to erode that stability and to disrupt it and even to change the strategic picture in the Middle East. So these countries have a shared set of interests, and therefore I think that this project will continue. It may take a little bit more time, but the strategic and economic logic of it is very clear, and so I think it certainly will continue. It's just a question of when and how it might have conditions that are propitious for it to continue.
Ambassador Keshap, when Prime Minister Modi was in the United States for the state visit, one of the most important sort of deals which was announced or agreements which was announced was related to the manufacture of jet engines in India. Do you believe that that project can pick up pace and that G414 engines, which are expected to be built in India, manufacture of that or the process leading to manufacture can actually start in a finite period of time? I ask this because there are some concerns over delays.
So, Vishnu, this is very complicated stuff. It involves a lot of high-tech components that we have to protect from our shared enemies and adversaries. And of course, our two nations are very transparent and they are democratic and they have processes that have to be respected. And so these deals are going through processes that are well established in both governments, both the General Atomics drone deal and the General Electric engine deal. What I will say is they are the absolute best technology in the world. The reliability of the suppliers and the manufacturers is unquestioned and unparalleled. And these platforms will serve the Indian people and the national defense of India for many decades to come. In fact, that engine deal may span as much as 40 years, as may the drone deal, because these are technologies and platforms that are durable. Also, this deal is done extremely transparently with full visibility by the bureaucracies and the publics and the elected officials. And of course, we have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So there's no shortcuts through this. We go through a very careful process, and it is moving along. I've been in touch with both companies. They're both proud USIBC board members, and I am confident this will go through because it has to go through. It's critical to our shared security the security of India, the security of the Indian Ocean, India's neighborhood, and I think there's a lot of strategic compulsion driving it.
Resilient supply chains as far as semiconductors are concerned, that's a huge concern for India, also for the United States. There was a lot of talk about building up, resilient supply chains as far as semiconductors are concerned. The US IBC would be looking pretty closely at that as well as one of the benchmarks in the economic relationship between our two sides. Where does that now stand?
Well, we've had a number of US IBC companies who were mentioned in the joint statement in helping move forward India's semiconductor ecosystem. Look, there is a compelling strategic and economic necessity that is driving this forward. India is viewed as a stable, democratic, friendly polity. It has an enormous people-to-people relationship with the United States and the other leading democracies. And for reasons that are very, very clear and compelling, it is in the national interest of the United States and free people everywhere to see that our supply chains are made more secure and more resilient following the pandemic. And semiconductors are critical to advanced technology and frankly, the advanced economies of our countries. So I think it's going very well. The Prime Minister's office and the government of India have been very, aggressive in courting these companies, in facilitating them, in seeing what they need in order to establish supply chain elements in India. And the announcements of the joint statement are very promising. And there's more of it that's been coming. If you look at US IBC companies that are now involved in electronics manufacturing in India, this is a sweeping and transformative moment for India. And I think India is right at that point where China was, frankly, at 1998, 1999, 2000, where you could see absolute acceleration for the next 20 years. India is already the fastest growing large economy on the planet. And I think that could be the case for 20 more years if they have clear leadership, if they have efficiencies in administration, ease of doing business, and frankly, that focus on bringing in the FDI that can power the country. And so sustained reform is necessary, including in the financial sector, in order to enable that inflow of FDI in the trillions of dollars. But I think if India gets it right, India could be a 20 or even more $30 trillion economy over the course of this century.
Yeah. A final question. There was a lot of anticipation over here that on Republic Day, President Biden would be available as the chief guest. There was a request, an invitation rather, which was sent out across. The U.S. ambassador over here also spoke about that. In some quarters, there would be a sense of disappointment that the president couldn't make it. Any thoughts on that?
Well, both India and the United States are going into national elections in 2024. And, in your country and in ours, these are all-consuming affairs. And a lot is riding on these things. Elections have real consequences, and the voters, of course, make a very careful choice. I think, and I can't speak for the president, I can't speak for the U.S. government, but I think that the fact that there is so much looming on the domestic front in the United States and in India, frankly means that because 2023 was a high watermark in statecraft at the highest levels between our two countries, I think 2024 is actually going to be an opportunity for more people-to-people, business-to-business, state-to-state engagement between our two great democracies. So I'm not too worried about it. I mean, this sort of thing happens all the time where scheduling conflicts come up or other logic drives things. And I do think that the domestic election logic in both countries is going to be preoccupying for many months to come. But when you look at the track record of accomplishment in 2023, we're riding high. Life is great. Our companies are happy. US IBC is booming. Our countries are booming. We are the envy of the world in terms of our strength and resilience. We have our problems, but because we're democracies, we can get through them and fix them in a forthright manner. So I'm feeling very optimistic about 2024 and beyond.
All right, Atul Keshap, thank you very much for speaking to us. Wonderful speaking to you as always, you help navigate the entire process of the relationship between the two sides. It was a relationship where there was so much left to be done, but now perhaps we are well past some of those differences and we can look forward to working together very closely in the future. Thanks very much indeed.
Ye hamara dharam sharam hai.
All right, Atul, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks very much indeed.